Meghan Markle rewears Princess Diana's iconic tiara before a room filled with cameras. But the moment Prince William sees it, he does something so shocking that even senior palace officials are left speechless. Meghan enters the glittering charity gala, believing she is honoring Diana's legacy, while Prince Harry stands beside her, unaware that the diamonds resting above his wife's face may be the very jewels his mother once intended for her sons. But inside Windsor Castle, William is no longer watching as Diana's grieving child. He is responding as the future king. One photograph makes him abandon dinner, seal the royal collection, and order Diana's private jewelry box opened immediately. Yet when the lock is broken, the iconic tiara is not inside. So how did Meghan Markle obtain Diana's tiara? Who secretly placed it in her hands? And what did William discover that made him protect Meghan instead of condemning her? The first camera flash came before Meghan reached the bottom of the staircase. Then another. Then dozens at once. For one breathless moment, the grand ballroom in Santa Barbara seemed to freeze around her. Conversations stopped. Champagne glasses hovered halfway to waiting lips. Even the orchestra faltered, one violinist lowering his bow as Meghan entered beneath a ceiling of crystal chandeliers. She had expected attention. The ivory gown had been chosen to create it. But this was different. People were not looking at her dress. They were staring at the tiara. A woman near the front whispered, much too loudly, "That belonged to Diana." Meghan's smile tightened. 3 weeks earlier, respected British antiques advisor Daniel Mercer had delivered the piece in an unmarked black velvet case. He had described it as a privately commissioned reproduction, made from old workshop sketches and loaned by an anonymous European collector who admired Diana's humanitarian work. The documents appeared genuine. The central sapphire was supposedly synthetic. The surrounding diamonds, laboratory-grown. Harry had still been uneasy. "Anything connected to my mother becomes a weapon,"
out of
he had
nowhere.
warned.
No messenger,
Meghan understood,
no courier,
yet
no
the evening
trace.
supported
It was
displaced
just there,
women and children,
slipped inside
and
a plain
Daniel had
envelope
framed
and left
the loan
right on
as a
Prince William's
symbolic
private
tribute
desk.
to 2 women who had challenged powerful institutions. Before leaving for the gala, Meghan's stylist, Claire Holden, had fastened the tiara and frowned. "It's heavier than modern work." Then she noticed a tiny
Nothing to hint
engraving
at who
beneath
sent
the
it.
clasp.
Inside that tiny drive were detailed
1986.
files exposing a shocking
Meghan
plan,
immediately
said to
called
have been in
Daniel.
motion for nearly
It was
18
copied
months.
from the original
The report
design,
claimed Meghan had
he told her calmly. Every detail, including the engraving. The answer should have reassured her. It did not. Now, standing before hundreds of
7:53 a.m.
guests,
sharp,
Meghan
and
felt the
instantly
weight of the
spotted that
diamonds
cream-colored
pressing
envelope
against
with
her
his
scalp
name.
like a warning. She began her speech. She spoke about women whose identities had been controlled by headlines, families, and institutions. The applause was warm, but the mood had shifted. Guests were lowering their eyes to their phones. Across social media, royal jewelry expert Eleanor Graves had posted a comparison between Meghan's tiara and archival photographs of Diana. The bent central setting matched. The unusual spacing between the left
The Prince of
sapphire
Wales has
and
shown
its
us
surrounding
he's not
diamonds
just a
matched.
future king. He's
Even a
devoted
tiny
and
missing
loving
stone
dad.
near the rear clasp matched. "If this is a replica," Eleanor wrote, "it is the most exact replica ever created." Harry read the post from the side of the stage, his face drained of color. Then his phone vibrated. The message came from a number he knew immediately, although William had not contacted him directly in months. "Do not let anyone remove the tiara. Its ownership must be established first." Harry stared at the screen. At that exact moment, more than 5,000 miles away, Prince William was leaving a private dinner at Windsor. He had received the same photographs. Inside a secure room, he enlarged the image until only the rear clasp filled the screen. There it was, the damaged hinge he remembered from childhood. William's expression hardened. He called the senior registrar of the royal collection. "Open my mother's jewelry vault," he said. Now, 20 minutes later, the locked storage chamber was unsealed in the presence of two witnesses. On the shelf sat the designated box for Diana's sapphire tiara. The lock was intact. The inventory card was in place. William watched as the registrar opened it. Inside lay only folded conservation cloth. No tiara. No explanation. Just an empty space where his mother's jewelry had supposedly remained for years. William stared into the box, anger giving way to something colder. This was no longer about Meghan. Someone inside the royal system had removed Diana's tiara long ago, and whoever had done it had just placed it on Meghan's head for the entire world to see. Back in California, Harry reached Meghan as she stepped away from the podium. His voice was barely above a whisper. "William thinks the tiara is real." Meghan looked toward the ballroom doors. Two unfamiliar security officers had just entered. Then her phone lit up with an anonymous message. "Ask the palace why the box was empty." To the guests watching from beneath the chandeliers, Meghan appeared to possess everything: fame, wealth, a sprawling California home, designer clothes, and a prince beside her. Yet the woman standing beneath the tiara had spent years discovering that status could open magnificent doors while leaving her dangerously exposed once she stepped through them. She had entered royal life expecting duty, tradition, and a powerful public platform. Instead, she had learned how quickly a smile could become a headline, how a family disagreement could become international entertainment, and how every jewel carried a history more complicated than its beauty. Now that history was resting on her head. "Keep smiling," Claire whispered as she approached, pretending to adjust the train of Meghan's gown. "Every camera in the room is on you." "Did Daniel answer?" Meghan asked without moving her lips.
Who sent it.
Claire
Inside that
shook her
tiny
head.
drive were
His phone
detailed
goes
files
straight to
exposing a
voicemail.
shocking plan, said to have
That
been
was
in
the
motion
second
for nearly
warning.
18 months.
The first
The
had been
report
the
claimed
unusual
Meghan had
weight of the tiara. The second was Daniel's disappearance at the exact moment the jewelry became controversial. The third came when one of the security
7:53
officers
a.m. sharp,
quietly showed
and
Harry an
instantly spotted that
identification card
cream-colored envelope with
issued
his
by
name.
the event's private protection company. "We've been instructed to secure the item," the officer said. "Instructed by whom?" Harry demanded. The man hesitated. "British legal representatives acting for an undisclosed owner." Harry stepped between him and Meghan. "My wife is not handing over anything until our lawyer arrives." The officer lowered his voice. "Sir, nobody is accusing her." "Not yet," Harry replied. For Harry, the diamonds were more than valuable stones.
He's not just a
They
future
carried the
king.
memory of a
He's
mother he had
devoted
lost
and
before
loving
he was
dad.
old enough to understand the forces surrounding her. He remembered Diana kneeling to speak to him at eye level, laughing during private moments hidden from photographers, and wearing dazzling jewels while looking lonelier than anyone in the room seemed to notice. That contradiction had stayed with him, splendor on the outside, isolation beneath it. Years later, despite inherited wealth, royal blood, and a life lived among palaces, Harry still carried the helplessness of the 12-year-old boy who had walked behind Diana's coffin. Now another crowd was staring at his wife while wearing something that had belonged to his mother. "Meghan," he said, "we need to leave the ballroom." She looked toward the stage, where the host was attempting to continue the program. "If I walk out now, they'll say I knew. If you stay, they'll say you're displaying stolen property. So either way, someone has already written the ending." Harry held her gaze. "Then we find out who wrote the beginning." Across the Atlantic, William stood inside one of the most secure rooms in Windsor Castle. The fortress around him represented centuries of inherited power. Stone walls, priceless paintings, armed protection, private estates, and a royal collection worth more than any one person could easily calculate. Yet none of that wealth could restore the one possession William wanted most: the voice of his mother, explaining what had happened to her belongings after she died. As the future king and senior heir, William possessed authority Harry no longer held within the institution. But that authority came with its own prison. Every decision could affect the crown. Every accusation could damage his father. Every family secret could become a constitutional crisis. Catherine entered quietly and saw the empty box. "Is it hers?" she asked. William did not look up. "The damaged clasp is identical." "Could it have been copied?" "Not that damage. I remember it." A memory returned with painful clarity. William had once watched Diana preparing for a formal engagement, surrounded by assistants and open jewelry cases. He had reached toward the sapphire tiara, fascinated by the stones, but Diana gently caught his hand. "Careful," she had said, smiling. "Some beautiful things are more fragile than they look." At the time, William believed she meant the tiara. Now he wondered whether she had meant herself. Sir Jonathan Vale, the senior registrar, stood
Out of
several
nowhere.
steps away.
No messenger,
He was a composed
no courier,
man,
no
accustomed
trace.
to handling
It was just
objects
there,
whose histories
slipped inside a plain
stretched
envelope
across
and left
generations.
right on Prince William's
His
private
tailored
desk.
evening suit, discreet family crest, and polished manner reflected a lifetime spent among people whose wealth did not need to be announced. But as William turned toward him, Sir Jonathan's confidence weakened. "When was the piece
Nothing to hint
last
at who
physically
sent it.
inspected?"
Inside that
William
tiny drive
asked.
were detailed files
records
exposing
will
a
show.
shocking plan,
"I'm not
said to have
asking
been in
about the
motion for
records.
nearly 18
I'm
months.
asking when a
The
human
report
being
claimed
last
Meghan had
opened this box and saw the tiara." Sir Jonathan swallowed. "I will need to verify that." William stepped closer. "Verify it now."
7:53 a.m.
Catherine
sharp,
watched him
and
carefully.
instantly spotted that
She knew the
cream-colored
signs of
envelope
his
with his
anger.
name.
The stillness, the clipped voice, the way he pressed his thumb against the side of his hand. But beneath the anger was grief. And beneath the grief was an old fear that Diana's memory had continued to be managed, traded and concealed long after her death. "William," Catherine said softly, "Meghan may not know what she is wearing." He finally looked at her. "She knew it resembled my mother's tiara. That is not the same as knowing it was real." The contrast
The Prince
struck
of
him.
Wales has shown
His
us
first
he's not
instinct
just
had
a
been to
future
see
king.
provocation.
He's a devoted
Catherine
and
was
loving
asking
dad.
him to consider manipulation. Before William could answer, the registrar's assistant entered, carrying a digital archive tablet. "Sir, there is a problem with the inventory photographs." William took the device. Images from 1998, 2002, and 2007 clearly showed Diana's sapphire tiara resting inside the box. But every photograph after 2007 showed only the closed case, its seal, and its catalog number. No later image proved the tiara had remained inside. William stared at the date. Why did the inspection procedure change? Sir Jonathan looked uneasy. That year, several privately owned items were reclassified. On whose authority? The registrar said nothing. William's phone vibrated. It was Harry. For several seconds, neither brother spoke after the call connected. Distance, resentment, and years of public conflict filled the silence between them. Finally, Harry said, "Meghan was told it was a replica." William's jaw tightened. By whom? "A British antiques advisor named Daniel Mercer. He has disappeared. Place the tiara in secure custody. Send me written confirmation that Meghan is not being accused." William looked again at the empty box. "I can't promise what the evidence will show. Then I can't promise we'll trust your people with it." The old bitterness surfaced instantly, but before either brother could end the call, Meghan took Harry's phone. "William, someone just sent me a message asking why the palace box was empty." William went still. How could they know that? That is exactly what I want you to tell me. The line fell silent again. Only 4 people inside Windsor had seen the empty box. Yet someone in California had known within minutes. William turned slowly towards Sir Jonathan, Catherine, and the 2 witnesses standing near the vault. The missing tiara was no longer the only danger. There was someone close enough to the investigation to watch every move they made. And that person had just contacted Meghan first. The secure suite above the Santa Barbara ballroom had been designed for visiting billionaires, diplomats, and celebrities who required privacy without sacrificing luxury. Its walls were lined with pale silk, the windows overlooked the dark Pacific, and a crystal decanter sat untouched beside furniture worth more than many people earned in a year. Yet Meghan felt
Out of
trapped.
nowhere. No messenger,
The tiara lay
no
on
courier,
a velvet cloth
no
at the
trace.
center of the table.
It was just there.
Without the
Slipped inside a
chandeliers
plain
and
envelope
cameras,
and left
it
right
looked
on
less
Prince
like a
William's
symbol
private
of
desk.
glamour and more like evidence. Harry paced near the windows while Claire repeatedly called Daniel Mercer. Each attempt ended in the same recorded message. The number you have dialed is no longer available. He didn't simply
Nothing to
switch
hint
it
at who
off,
sent it.
Claire
Inside
said.
that tiny
The
drive
line
were
has been
detailed files
disconnected.
exposing a shocking
Meghan
plan,
stared
said
at
to
the
have been in
engraving
motion for
beneath
nearly
the clasp.
18 months.
D.
The report claimed Meghan had
1986. The date no longer felt decorative. It felt personal. Daniel knew, she said. Harry stopped pacing. We don't know that.
7:53 a.m. sharp.
He told me the
and
engraving
instantly
had been
spotted that
copied from old
cream-colored envelope
sketches.
with his name.
He explained the weight. He provided authentication papers. Every answer was ready before we asked the question. Harry looked at the tiara, and for a moment the room disappeared around him. He remembered being a child at Kensington Palace, wandering into his mother's dressing room while assistants prepared her for an evening engagement. Diana had been seated before a mirror, the sapphire tiara resting nearby. The jewels had fascinated him, but what he remembered most was how her expression
The Prince
changed
of Wales has
when
shown
everyone
us
left
he's
the
not
room.
just a future king.
The public saw
He's a
diamonds.
devoted and loving
Harry
dad.
had seen exhaustion. Years later, he had inherited money, titles, influence, and access to circles most people could never enter. But none of that wealth had protected Diana, and it could not protect Meghan from a scandal designed before she even entered the ballroom. His phone rang. It was their lawyer, Rebecca Sloane. "I've reviewed the documents Mercer supplied," she said. "The authentication certificate uses the name Ashcombe and Reed." Harry placed the call on speaker. "Is that significant?" "It is a real London firm, but the document number does not follow its current filing system. I'm trying to reach a senior partner." Meghan folded her arms. "So the papers are forged." "Possibly, but someone wanted them to survive a basic inspection. That means this was planned carefully." A soft knock interrupted them. One of the security officers entered carrying a sealed protective case. "We have received instructions to preserve the tiara without altering its condition," he said. "From William?" Harry asked. "From lawyers representing the royal collection." Meghan stepped closer. "The royal collection that supposedly kept this tiara in a locked box?" The officer did not answer. Harry's expression hardened. Nothing leaves this room until ownership is established. The officer glanced toward the door. "Sir, if the item is reported stolen, local authorities may become involved." "Then let them," Harry replied. "At least they won't pretend an empty box is an inventory system." The officer withdrew, but his warning remained. Once the police became involved, Meghan would no longer be merely a woman deceived by a jeweler. She could become the public face of an international investigation involving stolen royal property. Across the Atlantic, William stood before the archive screen as the palace registrar searched records dating back nearly 2 decades. Catherine remained beside him, calm but watchful. She had entered royal life with neither the inherited rank nor vast private networks surrounding William, but years of scrutiny had taught her to read rooms where people concealed fear behind perfect manners. Sir Jonathan Vail was afraid. Not surprised. Afraid. Search every transfer connected to the Tiara after 2007, William ordered. The registrar entered the catalog number. One record appeared. Private transfer. DP settlement. The authorization field had been partially erased, but two names remained in the access hierarchy. The first was Charles. The second was Camilla. William stared at the screen. What does DP mean? Sir Jonathan adjusted his cuffs. It may refer to Diana, Princess of Wales. Or, I cannot speculate. William turned sharply. You have spent 30 years cataloging royal property. You can speculate. Catherine touched William's arm before his anger overtook the room. Who physically collected the item? She asked. Sir Jonathan opened another file. The transfer was executed through an external legal representative. Which firm? William demanded. The registrar hesitated. Ashcombe and Reed. The same name from Meghan's paperwork. The connection was no coincidence. William called Harry immediately. Your document came from Ashcombe and Reed? Yes, Harry said. Why? Because that firm handled the Tiara's removal in 2007. Meghan moved closer to the phone. Removal by whom? The signature is damaged. Convenient, Harry
Out of
muttered.
nowhere. No
William
messenger,
ignored the remark.
no courier,
I need
no
the original
trace.
authentication
It was just
papers
there,
and the
slipped
tiara
inside a
placed
plain
in neutral
envelope and left
custody.
right on Prince
Before
William's
Harry
private
could
desk.
answer, Rebecca raised one hand. Her second phone was ringing. She listened for less than a minute, then slowly lowered it. A senior partner at Ashcombe and Reed has confirmed something, she said. Daniel Mercer was never
Nothing to hint at
authorized
who
to
sent it.
describe the piece
Inside
as a
that
replica.
tiny drive were detailed
Meghan's
files
face
exposing
tightened.
a shocking plan, said
Did
to
the
have been in
firm know
motion
it
for
was
nearly
genuine?
18 months.
Rebecca
The report
looked
claimed
directly at
Meghan
her.
had
Yes. At Windsor, an assistant entered carrying an original paper ledger retrieved from a restricted archive. The page for 2007
7:53
contained a
a.m. sharp,
handwritten note
and
beneath the
instantly
transfer.
spotted that cream-colored
Selected
envelope with his
personal
name.
articles to remain beyond the reach of both princes until settlement conditions are fulfilled. William read it twice. Someone had deliberately taken Diana's belongings and prevented her sons from receiving them. But the worst discovery was written underneath in faded ink. Collateral accepted in place of direct payment. The tiara had not been misplaced. It had been used to pay someone. And whoever received it had waited nearly 20 years before placing it on Meghan Markle's
The
head.
Prince of Wales has
The
shown
first
us
name
he's
connected
not
to
just
the
a future
payment
king.
was
He's
Adrian
a
Bell.
devoted and loving
William
dad.
had never met him, but he remembered hearing the surname during his childhood. Bell had been a discreet media consultant who moved between newspaper offices, political advisors, and royal households without ever appearing in photographs. He understood how reputations were protected, how rumors were planted, and how damaging documents could disappear before the public knew they existed. By 2007, Bell had become dangerous. He claimed to possess copies of private correspondence, proving that senior palace figures had encouraged hostile briefings against Diana during the collapse of her marriage. The letters did not prove every accusation made about the institution, but they were damaging enough to reopen wounds the family had spent years trying to bury. Instead of paying Bell directly, someone had offered him valuable personal objects as collateral. Diana's tiara was among them. William closed the ledger. Find everyone who attended those negotiations. Sir Jonathan's face tightened. Some records were sealed by private agreement. Unseal them. I may not have the authority. William looked at him with the controlled stillness Catherine recognized as more dangerous than shouting. You are standing in front of an empty box that was used to deceive my brother and me for 19 years. Do not speak to me about authority. The search led them to Margaret Ellison, a retired royal archivist living quietly in Surrey. She had catalogued Diana's correspondence after her death and left palace service soon after the 2007 transfer. William visited her without cameras or official vehicles. Margaret opened the door, saw him, and immediately whispered, "The tiara has surfaced." It was not a question. Her modest sitting room contained no visible signs that she had once worked among priceless collections. Only a silver-framed photograph of Diana revealed the life she had left behind. "I tried to stop them," Margaret said. William sat opposite her. "Who?" She looked toward the window, as if 19 years had not been long enough to make her feel safe. "They called it asset protection. They said selected belongings had to be moved beyond the reach of disputed estates and opportunistic claims. But that was not the truth." A memory returned to her with painful clarity. A long polished table, sealed folders, and Diana's tiara resting inside an open case, while men discussed it as though it were a bond certificate. Margaret had protested. "That belongs to her sons," she had said. Sir Malcolm Harrow, then a senior advisor trusted with the palace's most sensitive problems, had replied coldly, "It belongs wherever it causes the least damage." William's hands tightened. "Was my father involved?" "He signed a summary," Margaret said. "But the document described the transfer as temporary protection. I do not know how much he understood." And Camilla. Her name appeared because Malcolm later worked closely with her household, but I never saw her in the negotiations. The distinction mattered. William wanted truth, not a convenient enemy. Margaret crossed the room and removed a small brass key from behind Diana's photograph. "This opens a deposit box containing copies of the original correspondence. I kept them because I feared the official file would be altered." Before William could take it, she held his gaze. "Adrian Bell died 6 months ago. His daughter inherited the tiara and the papers." "Victoria Bell?" Margaret nodded. She blamed the palace for using her father and abandoning him, but she could not have known Meghan's schedule, measurements, or stylist without help. William understood immediately. Someone inside the royal network had guided the tiara directly toward Meghan. Back in California, Daniel Mercer was found attempting to board a private flight under another name. When confronted by investigators, his confidence collapsed. "I was paid to deliver it," he admitted. "I was told to call it a replica." "Who paid you?" Rebecca demanded. "A company called Hawthorne Heritage Holdings. The company belonged to Victoria Bell." But Daniel revealed one final instruction that transformed the scandal into a calculated attack. The client said Meghan had to wear it publicly before the palace could authenticate it. "They wanted William to accuse her first." Harry's expression darkened. "They wanted another war between us." Daniel nodded. "And someone in Britain provided everything. The gala date, the designer, even the size of Meghan's head." At Windsor, William opened the deposit box. Inside were the transfer letters, Bell's demands, and a recent photograph. It showed Victoria Bell seated beside Sir Malcolm Harrow at a private charity dinner. The man who had arranged the secret transfer in 2007 was still involved. And this time, he had not merely hidden Diana's tiara. He had turned it into a weapon aimed directly at her sons. William confronted Sir Malcolm Harrow in the library of a secluded country house where former courtiers gathered when they wished to remain close to power without appearing near it. Malcolm was in his 70s, impeccably dressed and surrounded by the quiet wealth of inherited privilege. Oil portraits, silver-framed photographs, first-edition books, and windows overlooking acres of private land. He had spent decades protecting the monarchy's secrets, but he had also learned to confuse protection with control. William placed the photograph of Malcolm and Victoria Bell on the desk. "You helped her." Malcolm glanced at it without surprise. "I advised her to seek recognition for what happened to her father. You gave her Meghan's schedule." "I gave her nothing." William opened another file. The email address used to contact Daniel Mercer belonged to a foundation whose trustees include your former secretary. For the first time, Malcolm's expression shifted. William leaned forward. You expected me to see Meghan wearing my mother's tiara and react before asking questions. You expected me to accuse her publicly. Then Harry would retaliate, my father would intervene, and the entire family would tear itself apart while you destroyed the remaining records. Malcolm stood slowly. You speak as though the institution survives on honesty. It survives because men like me prevented every private failure from becoming a public crisis. No, William replied.
Out of nowhere.
It survives
no messenger,
despite men
no
like
courier,
you.
No
Malcolm's
trace.
restraint finally
it was just
broke.
There. Slipped
You
inside
are
a plain
preparing to
envelope and
dismantle
left
systems
right on
you
Prince
do not
William's private
understand.
desk.
You think transparency is courage, but sometimes truth destroys more than secrecy ever could. William remembered Diana's empty jewelry box, Harry's distrust, and Meghan standing beneath cameras while unknowingly wearing
Nothing to hint
evidence
at
of
who
an
sent
old
it.
betrayal.
Inside that tiny
Then
drive
let
were
the truth
detailed
decide
files
what
exposing a
deserves to
shocking plan,
survive.
said to have
That
been in
evening,
motion for nearly
William
18
met
months.
Charles,
The
Catherine,
report
and
claimed
senior
Meghan
advisors at Windsor. Harry joined through an encrypted video link from California, with Meghan seated beside him. Charles read the 2007 transfer papers in
7:53
silence.
a.m. sharp. And
I was
instantly
told the
spotted
items
that
were being
cream-colored
protected,
envelope with his
he
name.
said. William's voice remained controlled. You signed without asking what protection meant. There were legal disputes, threats, people demanding money, and you looked away. The words struck harder than shouting. Camilla's former connection to Malcolm was examined, but no evidence showed that she had authorized the scheme. William refused to manufacture guilt merely because the public might accept it easily. Then came the decision that shocked everyone. The palace had
The
already
Prince of
prepared a
Wales has
statement
shown us
accusing
he's not
Meghan of
just a
possessing
future
an
king.
unauthorized
He's a
royal
devoted and
heirloom.
loving dad.
William tore it in half. There will be no accusation against her. One advisor stared at him. Sir, the public expects a response. They will receive one. Within hours, William confirmed that Meghan had been deceived and announced an independent investigation into the historical handling of Diana's private possessions. He suspended access to the collection for every household connected to the transfer, including offices close to the king and queen. The palace erupted. Some called it reckless. Others called it a declaration of war against the old establishment. Harry watched the announcement in silence. Meghan lowered her eyes. For once, William had not protected the institution from them. He had protected them from the institution. The tiara was returned through independent legal custody and examined by Dr. Nicholas Hart. During conservation, he discovered that the damaged rear clasp contained a narrow hidden cavity. Inside was a strip of paper sealed in wax. The handwriting belonged to Diana. William unfolded it with trembling hands. For William and Harry, not for sale, settlement, or bargaining. Let them decide its future together. For several seconds, he could not speak. The wealth, the titles, the palaces, and the years of bitterness seemed to disappear. He was simply a son hearing his mother's voice through a message she had hidden before anyone knew it would be needed. William sent the original note to Harry and kept only a certified copy. Together they agreed the tiara would be displayed in support of Diana's humanitarian causes, then placed under joint control. But as the investigation closed its first file, William received a final document listing 7 objects transferred in 2007. 6 had been recovered. The 7th remained missing. Its description contained only 4 words. Private recording, DW, do not release. Catherine saw William's face change. Is it over? She asked. He folded the page slowly. No, he said. The tiara was only the beginning.